Hi there, welcome to another episode of Dave's Desk here in the study. This week we're going to be looking at the accounts of Jesus' death and resurrection in the Gospels. And slightly strange perhaps, we've not that long had the sort of Easter Sunday, but actually in the Church of England the season of Easter lasts all the way up until Ascension. And so we're still in this season of Easter, and so we're going to spend some time reflecting on that once more. And we're going to start with the Last Supper. Jesus is gathering with his friends in Jerusalem to celebrate the festival of Passover, which is a sort of a commemoration of what happened with Moses leading the people out of Jerusalem. And in that they celebrate the fact that the Lamb died in their place. The Lamb died so they could be free. And before the meal starts, they're all there grubby, their feet caked in the dirt of the street, and there's no one there to make foot washing easy, which is, if you imagine, chances are they would have been lying, sort of lounging sideways, so your feet would have been near someone else's head, so it's quite important that your feet aren't stinky. And so Jesus strips down and he washes their feet. He does this task that the lowliest of the servants in a household would generally do. And then we understand that during the meal Judas departs and they share this meal. And beginning the meal, Jesus takes a loaf of bread and he breaks it and he gives it to them, and he talks about the fact that his body is going to be broken like this bread is broken in order to set them free. And then at the end of the meal, Jesus gives thanks for the wine, and he passes around the cup and he says that this cup is a seal of the covenant of grace that he's making with them, that his blood will be poured out in the same way the wine is being poured out to seal that covenant. And then once the meal is finished, they go out into Jerusalem, they're going for a walk, and Jesus begins to pray and to minister to them and teach them, and he reassures them that although there's going to be a dark, grief-filled moment to come, there will be also a comforter and a one, like bit different, who will come and minister to them as he would. And there's a huge amount in this Passover story that we could reflect on that we don't have time. We don't have time to talk about the Passover and all that means. There's no time to talk about the fact that Jesus ministers to Judas washing his feet as he does to the other disciples. What I want us to reflect on is the nature in which this is it's a real meal. Jesus, he doesn't hold up a loaf of bread, of which there would have been many at the meal, and say, this bread is broken as the way my bread will be broken, then eat himself and allow the disciples to break their own bread. No, they all share in that one bread. In the same way, they've all got their own cups of wine, but he doesn't say, my blood will be poured out like wine in this cup, drink your own cup. It's really important that they've drunk from the same cup, that they've eaten of the same loaf of bread, that the physicality of being there present with one another is important. There's a trap that Christians in the West have often fallen into, of seeing of ourselves as true spiritual beings trapped within flesh, that on our death we'll lose the flesh and we'll just be the true spiritual beings. And we have a habit of saying anything that isn't spiritual is therefore less important and the physical is therefore less important. But actually the Bible doesn't hold with that. The Bible sees us as whole beings, of flesh and spirit, and that and the way both work with one another is important. And therefore the fact that this Passover meal is eaten of one loaf, of one cup, with one another, is important in the way that it binds those 12 together. In the not too distant future, from the disciples' perspective, the church is about to be persecuted, and the church in Jerusalem was scattered at this persecution. But those followers of Jesus who are at that meal, they're bound together by that communion feast, and everyone else scattered, but they remained. And I think it's good for us to remember that at this time when we're not sharing in communion, because we can't be with one another and share in the cup and share in the bread. That we remember that we are still bound together by that feast that we have shared. That we do remember that we are united even though we are separated. And I encourage you to be praying for one another, to be talking with each other, and to be asking for help if you should need it, or encouraging others to ask for help if you know that they could do with help but you fear perhaps they don't know they need help yet. Sometimes we get in that place where others can see that we are in need and we are just so focused on something else that we miss our need. So do please be encouraging and supporting one another. Phone me up and nag me if you think I should be doing something. Always happy to be challenged and to be engaged with in that way. But let's remember who we are within God's sight, a people called by his name and sent to do his will. Amen. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.